try and make these analog systems.
But this is rather complicated. Look at this.
It's really
So
complicated, but
this
it
is
comes from one mode more
like
kind of utilitarian, and then inside they have all the beautiful playfulness. And I think I've kind of made it look more like a magician's box, which is actually, I think I haven't suspended disbelief with this one. I broke my own rule with this one.
So, hi Conrad, can you just, I know we've spoken about it a lot today, but could you just tell me a little bit about your work in a summary?
Well, my name is Conrad. I'm an artist based in London. I predominantly make sculpture. It's abstract. I use a lot of geometry, mathematics, philosophy. The things appear like functional machines, but actually beneath them there's a sort of more metaphysical or poetic heart. So they seem to be models or models of systems or useful apparatus for something, but actually there's a more sort of melancholic element to them. They have there's a sort of element of failure often in them, and through that failure they ask a lot of questions rather than answering them. So hopefully through the failure as systems they succeed as artworks.
What was the inspiration for all of this geometrical approach to art? It's something I wouldn't normally associate with art, but it's quite a unique thing.
I've always done it. I've been an artist for 30 years now, I guess, and I've been playing around with geometry, rule-based sort of modular systems. I did maths and physics at school, so I did it for A-level. I was not a very good mathematician or physicist, but I loved it for all the ideas and the way it challenged our reality. So that has always been kind of the key of what I do. Is I like to sort of chisel away at what is real or what we believe to be true with work. So it's trying to realise that we all have a perception envelope that's quite limited, and that actually that we're all scientists and artists are often trying to see beyond that perception envelope through different ingenious methods.
So in your work, do you work with scientists a lot?
This is the first sort of residency I've done in a university. I've done a residency at the Science Museum in London quite a long time ago now. I've got a show in the Institute of Mathematics in Oxford at the moment. That's a big survey of around 35 works that go back 15, 20 years, and that's called Cascading Principles, Expansions in Philosophy, Geometry and Inference. And it's curated by Fatos Ustek. So she's a curator, an art curator, but she has a degree in mathematics. And so we've set up a lot of talks between mathematicians and artists. So we're trying to sort of create that cross-fertilization and that two-way kind of conversation, that two-way discourse.
So what is it that you're hoping to achieve with Silke here, with this residency?
Well, I've already learned a great deal. I've already found it really inspiring, so that's great. So hopefully that the great success, it won't be just that me taking stuff away and using it, but there'll be a kind of two-way thing, that there'll be stuff that I can contribute to the way people maybe imagine or envision these things that we will never see. And that, I think that's a really useful and important thing, because imagination is so key with these things, because they are things that will never be seen by either too big or too far away or just too small to really ever see visually. And we're visually and language based kind of people, and so we need to transmogrify things into both visual and metaphoric language to understand it to a layperson, and that also just to anyone. I mean, I think no one really understands sort of a lot of the sort of implications of quantum mechanics and quantum gravity. It's sort of so beyond our ken and our kind of intuition that we do need to sort of try and find ways to represent these things that allow us to understand them a bit more.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about art in such, it's quite a scientific way that you talk about it. Do you think there's a lot of parallels between art and science?
I think a lot of art, not all artists work the way I work, so there's a lot of artists who are very intuitive, very spontaneous, and will just throw paint at a canvas, and there's real validity in that kind of working, but mine is a much more sort of rational or methodical approach. So I do sort of mimic or use a lot of the same sort of techniques that a scientist might use, in that there's a lot of repetition of the same experiment with a minor adjustment, and just to see what the effect will be. I create arrays of works where one geometric element has been changed, so you see that sort of almost like the Muybridge effect of each piece, how it evolves through that minor change. So you create control, and you do, so it's sort of deploying those kinds of methodologies.
Typically, art and science are quite different disciplines. I think because of that, it's quite hard sometimes for artists and scientists to communicate with each other. How do you think we can bridge that gap and increase these communication channels?
Well, so there's, I mean, a few years ago I went to a really sort of career-changing symposium in Karlsruhe. It was AKM Museum, and I was asked to speak at this talk called Molecular Aesthetics, and I didn't know what molecular aesthetics was, and it sounded a bit kind of pretentious at first, and then I went to this thing and I was really blown away by this sort of history of trying to represent molecules, and how there was a real problem in science. How do you represent these things that we can't see, or that is too small for an electron microscope, or the wavelength of light? And so there was this kind of problem, and so it fell upon very imaginative scientists to create these sorts of diagrams and ways of representing these entities. And then a year later I went back to do to one called neuroaesthetics, and I was really surprised, really startled by how little visual information there was coming out of neuroaesthetics as opposed to molecular aesthetics. It was such a newer kind of scene, and there was just all this data, reams of data coming out of the brain, but no ways to represent it. And there was a real sort of call upon artists, I think, to sort of get involved, to try and represent these huge these kind of unfathomable sort of complex networks of neurons, and how we try and represent those things visually.
Picking up on that, then, do you think that in general, can scientists learn from the way that artists work?
I hope so. I hope it's a two-way street. I mean, that was my sort of my anxiety, is this, that we can just sort of plunder ideas from science and sort of bend them and use them in our way. But I think that there's a genuine need for dialogue. I mean, there's certainly a need for science to explain itself to a broader public rather than just itself, and so that by itself has to exist in more than just mathematical formula. It needs to be transmogrified into visual information and in visual accessible forms, and so that artists are needed there in order to interpret, represent, create kind of metaphoric ways of or similes or analogous things. So like the rope machine is quite analogous to do a lot of things within time and within sort of kind of how we perceive time, but also how we kind of model time. And it's been really interesting talking about these Penrose space-time diagrams in relation to the conical nature of the string, and I've been really fascinated by some of those things that I have just done instinctively, but they seem to have some kind of correlation, which is really exciting, because people seeing that within it really thrills me.
So just to conclude, then, what are you most excited about moving forward in this collaboration here?
Well, definitely creating something for the Lakeside Arts will be is going to be amazing. So that's going to be in 25. So we're going to have a piece that is going to look at all the experiments, all the different areas of research they've looked at, from these false vacuum decay to these study of the turbulence around vortexes as analogous to gravitational waves around black holes. I've got a few weeks to come up with a proposal. It's not that long, but it's a great space to respond to, and there's been some really great things I've been exposed to, which is been really exciting. So I think obviously making a new work is hugely exciting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Great. From one point, so they never go in and out of phase. So there is that